Hello everyone, welcome back. So before we start moving on to the UI stuff, we need to go ahead and set up our interaction system so that we can pick up stuff in order to later display on our UI in our hotbars or our inventory, what have you. So what we are going to do is we are going to use our interact block thingy. So let's go to it and we'll open that up. And the way we're going to register our interact radius is instead of using a sphere trace or a line trace or anything like that, we're just going to use this. We're going to add, so if we highlight the static mesh and we go to add a component, we can add a box collision, which almost fits exactly how we need it. But the way you can tell exactly the size that you will need is if I highlight my static mesh, we can hover over it in this menu, and I can't scroll up to show you or mouse over it to show you, but if you find approximate size right there, it says 100 by 100 by 100. So the way size works in Engine is it starts from the center and moves out. So it goes 50 in this direction, 50 in this direction, making 100 units across. Same thing for our box size. So you'll see right here with the box selected, over in the shape we can set the box extent, and this is the radii of that box. So if I set this one to 50 and this one to 50, you'll see it matches the outline of our little blue square. And then if I set the Z to also 50, it'll match it completely. The reason it's squashed down like this is because since it's a child of the static mesh component, it is inheriting this Z value. But that'll make it to where it completely overlaps everything we need it to do. Now actually we don't need it at 50-50, but that's how you can make it match the exact size. If it is this size, then it'll register interaction with everything around it also. So we're actually going to set this to be 49 by 49, 48 by 48 would be good enough, just to give it a little bit of a space in between each one. So the next one, the next plot of land or whatever would be right here on the blue line, but our interaction radius we only want to be at the gold line, so we know for sure which spot we're interacting with. Since we're in our interaction folder, we'll go ahead and set the interface into here. So we're going to create a blueprint interface in order to connect to whatever we're trying to pick up or interact with, open, etc. So this will be pi underscore interact. We'll double click and open that up and give it one function so far called interact. Oh, get up there. Then we'll compile that. Now we need an actual actor to interact with, and we need to tell this what kind of things we want it to interact with. So if we go to edit and project settings, we're going to establish an object type because I only want it to interact with certain things. So if we type in object into the search bar, we can set an object channel. You can have up to 18 custom of these, so you want to make sure you're using them well. We'll just set a new one and call it interact, and then anything we want to interact, we'll just set it as this object type and set our box collision to custom. Ignore everything but, might have to compile in order to find that. It will overlap interact. So it'll ignore everything else so that we don't have constantly it's overlapping things and doing all that. Now, since this is what we're using to interact with the world, we're going to set our interact function up in here. So we don't have to add it to the class settings. I almost did that, but we don't need that. So we'll delete all this. We're just going to create a custom event called interact check. And we will take our box collision, get overlapping actors. So this will take anything that's overlapping it that's of that object interact collision type. And we're just going to get the very first one. So we will get 0. Because remember, arrays always start at 0. And from here, we'll see is valid. We'll check to make sure it is something there. And if it is, then we call our interact message to tell it, go ahead, since you're real, we'll go ahead and try to do something. So if we compile that, then we can go set up our test interactable, which we will just set right here, be a blueprint class of an actor, bp underscore test interact. Double click and open that up, and I'm just going to give it a static mesh of a cube also, why not? And under its collision settings, we will set it to custom, and the object type is what we need to adjust. So everything else can stay the way it is, and we'll just make sure that that is like that. Now this one is the one that will need the blueprint interface attached, so under class settings, let's add the interface of BPI interact. And then we'll get rid of all this, and then on event interact, and you want event interact, so this is basically if something else calls this function, what does it do? For now we're just going to print a string, and it is going to be, I'm just going to leave it say hello for now. Now to get access to this event inside of our interact checker, we can go back to our player blueprint where we're spawning it and creating a reference to it. So remember, we spawn it and then we're setting it right here. We can actually pull functions from it through this reference. So we will go set up a function call. If you right click and type in 1, it's easier to get these keyboard events rather than going E and then scrolling forever and ever. So just 1 right here, highlight it, and then we can click this little button, E, and that's our interact button. So we'll grab our interact checker, right click and convert it to a validated get, just to make sure that it is there. Should always be, but in case there's ever a situation where we need to destroy it and then spawn it again later, we don't want it trying to register function calls if it's not actually valid at the moment. So this will give us that option later on, whether we use it or not, we'll see. And if it is valid, then we do our interact check. Not the message, but the interact check, because that is a function inside this one. This one does not have the interface set up, so if you try to call that interact message, it'll register as nothing. It just won't. This won't do anything. It even says this does nothing if the target does not implement the required interface. So we don't want that. So let's jump in. Let me go grab that test interact and we'll set it right there. So it does nothing for right now. And then when I jump over it and press E, it's registering. So this will let us be able to, let's set one more right beside it and just double check and make sure our spacing is good enough. So it's only firing it once, meaning it's only registering 1. And then not interacting with anything else. So that'll let us, if we come up to like a bush or something, and we want to check and see if it's got berries, whatever we feel like doing. If we do we'll do a foraging system, so that'll come in handy for that. I am going to make an adjustment to my particular grid offset. Oh, and we need to take away mouse input. So we'll do that now. Let's go into our player blueprint. And under the camera input, since we're not adjusting the camera, we no longer need any of this because all that's doing is making it to where our character rotates and then gets off of our grid input. And what was the other thing that I just said? Oh, I'm going to adjust my grid offset. So I'm just going to set this to be 5. It was a little too far out in front of it. Yeah, I like that a little bit better. So we'll also be able to use this grid checker thing when we get to adding tools. We'll do our animation and then it'll do a check over that overlap to see what it's interacting with. We'll feed over our tool information to be like, if we're using a hoe, we'll till the ground. If we're using a watering can, we'll water the plot, etc., etc. But for now, this is the basis that we needed, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye bye.